Guys, we'll take one comprehensive case study where we'll understand how indifference chart have to be developed. Okay, so we have this ABC Limited presently has 36 lakhs in debt outstanding, bearing an interest rate of 10%. It wishes to finance a 40 lakh expansion program and is considering three alternatives: either to go for additional debt at 12% interest, or preference shares with 11% dividend, or sale of equity shares at rupees 16 per share. The company presently has 8 lakh shares outstanding and is in a 40% tax bracket. If earnings before interest and taxes are presently 15 lakh, what would be the EPS, earnings per share, for the three alternatives assuming no immediate increase in profitability? That is, we have to find out earnings per share with EBIT of 15 lakh, because the question says there is no immediate increase in profitability. So we have to find out what is EPS if your EBIT is going to be same 15 lakh, but you have to factor other expenses, something like interest or something like preference dividend. Then question B is develop indifference chart. We'll come to that. And question C, which alternative do you prefer, and something else. We'll come to that little later. But with this available information, what we'll do now is we'll try to find out what is the EPS of three alternatives. Okay, so before that, let's capture what are the alternatives we have and what is the cost of project. Let's give a preamble. Okay, we know the cost of the project. What is the cost of the project? The cost of the project is 40 lakhs, and this project can be funded out of these three alternatives. That is, they can go for alternative A, B or C. And alternative A, let's say it is going to be an option where they are going to go with exclusive debt. So alternative A is going to give you exclusive debt, that is 40 lakh has to be raised as a debt, and if 40 lakh is raised as a debt, they have to pay interest at 12%. So what is going to be the interest amount? Interest is going to be 4,80,000. So it is going to be 4.80 lakh. This is the case if it is debt. And we have the option B where the company can go for preferred stock. Okay, option B is preferred stock, and it's not a combination, so it's an exclusive arrangement. So if they go for preferred stock, they have to raise entire 40 lakhs in the form of preferred stock, and on which they have to pay in dividend at 8%. Okay, so is it 8%? I'm sorry, it is 11%. Let me change it. It is not 8%, it is rather 11%. So 40 lakhs into 11%, so it is going to be, say, 4.40 lakhs. And if they go for the third option, that is alternative C, they have to go for exclusive equity, in which case entire 40 lakh have to be raised in the form of equity. But when we talk about equity, what is going to concern us? What is the number of shares? Okay, so at what price they are going to raise this equity? It is 40 lakh divided by 16 per share. It is 40 lakh divided by 16 per share, because we have the information here. The equity shares are going to be at rupees 16. Okay, so 40 lakh divided by 16, let's see what is going to be the value. Let me capture that. Yeah, 40 lakh divided by 16 will give me the value as 2,50,000. Okay, it means it is going to be 2,50,000 number of equity shares. So now I have three scenarios: scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3. In scenario 1, I know what is my interest. In scenario 2, I know what is my preference dividend, and in scenario 3, I know what is going to be my number of equity shares. Okay, now with this information, let us calculate what is going to be the earnings per share. So we'll do that. we have to prepare a statement, and let me have all the three scenarios. Scenario A, where we'll go with exclusive debt. Scenario B, where we'll go with preference stock. And scenario C, where we'll go with exclusive equity. And in all the three scenarios, we know our earnings before interest and tax. Earnings before interest and tax in all the three scenarios are going to be 15 lakh. So 15 lakh, let me copy and reproduce them. It is 15 lakh in all the three scenarios. Okay, so I'll copy and reproduce them. So I'll make use of them here. And I have one more. Yeah. So in all the three scenarios, my EBIT is 15 lakh. But one thing what we have to remember is, from this, when we subtract the interest, we should not forget the interest on the existing loan, because the question says already they have a debt. What is their existing debt? Already they have 36 lakh debt, which is outstanding at the rate of 10%. Okay, so we have to provide for that. So less interest on existing loan, it is 36 lakh into 10%. 36 lakh into 10%, and it is going to be 3,60,000. And this is common for all the three options. Okay, so let me just select this because it is common for all the three. So I'll copy and replace or paste this. So in all the three options I have this. Then I should think about interest on new loan. Let me highlight that. Less interest on new loan. And please be reminded that new loan will be applicable only for your option A, where you are thinking of debt. Okay, and how much is that? It is 40 lakhs into 12%, so it is going to be 4,80,000. It is 4,80,000. That is your interest on new loan. Let me just bring them here. Yeah, it is interest on new loan 4,80,000, and this is not applicable for your B and C. Now from this, if you subtract, that is from EBIT, if you are going to subtract these two items, what you get is EBT. Okay, so let me draw a line. So here we'll have EBT. EBT is nothing but EBIT minus these two items. So it is going to be 6,60,000 in alternative A, 11,40,000 in alternative B, and 11,40,000 in alternative C. Now from this we have to subtract tax, and question says tax rate is 40%. So tax at 40% on 6,60,000 works out to 2,64,000. And here 11,40,000 into 40% works out to 4,56,000. It is 4,56,000. So now if I remove this, I'll get earnings after tax, but that's not the earnings available for equity shareholders, because there is a preference stock that will carry preference dividend. So earnings after tax, 6,60,000 minus 2,64,000, it's going to be 3,96,000. Here 11,40,000 minus 4,56,000, how much is that? 6,84,000, and same 6,84,000. Okay, so let me just finish off. Yeah, 6,84,000. So what I have now is earnings after tax, and what I have to do now is, there is a second plan which involves preference dividend, so I have to remove preference dividend. So let me just change the view and increase it. Okay, so from this let me deduct the preference dividend. Less preference dividend. Preference dividend is applicable only for plan B, and what was the amount? It was not applicable for plan A. It is 40 lakhs into 11%, so we know it is 4,40,000. Okay, and for plan C it is not applicable. It is not applicable for plan C. Let me just change my stylus. So it's not applicable for plan C. Now what I'll do, from this earnings after tax, I'll remove the preference dividend. So what I'll get is earnings available for equity shareholders. Earnings available for equity shareholders. Let's say EAESH. Earnings available for equity shareholders. So for case 1, it is going to be 3,96,000. Same, no change. But for alternative B, it is 6,84,000 minus 4,40,000. So it is going to be 2 lakh. How much? It's going to be 2,44,000. And the third one, it's going to be 6,84,000 minus 0. So it is same 6,84,000. So now comes the question. In order to calculate EPS, what is relevant is we have to find out what is the number of equity shares. Okay. Here this is your existing option. Here you are not making any change to your capital structure. So what is the number of equity shares? The question says already they have 8 lakh shares, right? So number of equity shares, already they have 8 lakh. So it is 8 lakh. And if you take the preference also, the equity shares is not going to undergoing any change. So there also it is 8 lakh. But if you recollect the equity option, we have already calculated, they are going to raise the 40 lakh by issuing equity shares at rupees 16. It means 2 lakh 50 shares will be raised. Already 8 lakh shares are there. 8 lakh plus 2 lakh 50 is going to be 10 lakh 50,000 shares. Okay. So now you know what is the earnings available for equity shareholders. You know what is the number of equity shares. So if you divide earnings available for equity shareholders by number of equity shares, you get what is known as EPS. So EPS 3,96,000 divided by 8 lakh is going to be, let's say, 0.50. We'll round off it as 0.50. 2,44,000 divided by 8 lakh, it's going to be 0.31. I'm rounding off. 6,84,000 divided by 10,50,000, it's going to be 0.65. So in this way, we have completed question 1. Question 1 basically involves computation of EPS of all the 3 options. So now let's move on to the second part of the question. That is, we have to develop an indifference chart for these alternatives. What are the approximate indifference point? To check one of these points, what is the indifference point mathematically between debt and common? So the question wants us to develop an indifference chart. So how do we develop indifference chart? Let me give you an understanding first, then we'll get into the exact indifference chart calculation. Okay. So let me draw a line. Vertical line. And I'm going to use this line for plotting earnings per share. Okay. Then I'll draw a horizontal line, let's say from here, and it goes. So I'll use this horizontal line for plotting my EBIT. So how this indifference chart actually works is, in this indifference chart, we'll try to showcase all the capital structure options available. If you take the present problem itself, you have 3 capital structures. So what I'll do, I'll try to capture each and every capital structure. To start with, I'll have the equity capital structure. If my EBIT is going to be 0, and if I'm not going to have any interest in my capital structure, that is, if I'm not going to have any debt in my capital structure, then I will not carry any interest. So in equity option, if my EBIT is going to be 0, then my EPS will also be 0. So I'll be starting from here, and when my EBIT increases with my equity option, my EPS will also increase and it will go up like this. Okay. So this is my capital structure option 1, or say alternative A, where I'm going to have only equity in my structure. So when my EBIT increases, my EPS also increases. Okay, so I'll call this as say capital structure 1, where I'm going to have only equity. Then I'll also have another capital structure where I'm going to have debt. And what happens in case of debt? If my EBIT is 0, my EPS will not be 0 in case of debt. Why? Because the debt is going to have interest element. So when EBIT is 0, there is going to be some interest. So 0 minus interest, it means it will result in loss. So that means if my EBIT is 0, my EPS will be negative in case of debt option. Okay, so let's say somewhere like -1 or 0.5. So if I want to plot a line for my debt option, I cannot start from here, rather I should start somewhere from here. Okay, so let me highlight that in a different color. So this is my debt option. So my debt option starts from here and it goes. So this is the point where my EPS becomes 0. It means if I want to achieve a 0 EPS, I should have minimum this much level of EBIT. And this will be called as your financial break-even point, because this is the point at which all your fixed financial charges are covered and your EPS becomes 0. Okay, and after that this will keep increasing. I mean, when your EBIT increases, your EPS also increases, and it goes and goes, and it will reach a particular point. It will reach a particular point where this line, that is your debt structure, will come and meet your equity structure. So there is actually an intersection between your capital structure 1 and capital structure 2, and beyond this what will happen? This line will go up. This line will go up. So this is your capital structure 2, which comprises debt. So what is happening here? If you look at this diagram, here the EPS from your debt option is lesser than the EPS from the equity option, but the difference gets narrowed, and there is a point where both the options are going to give you same EPS. Okay, so if I plot this, there is a point where both the options are going to give you same level of EPS. So if I plot this, this is nothing but the indifference point between your capital structure 1 and 2. It means this is the level of EBIT at which both your option 1 and option 2 will give you same level of EPS. Okay. Now let me select one more option where we talked about, let's say, preference. So preference, I can start either from here, or I can also start somewhere from negative, depending upon what kind of dividend you have or what kind of arrangement. Let's say for simplicity, I'll start somewhere from here. Okay, so I'm starting somewhere from here. When my EBIT is 0, okay, EPS is negative at this level, and it goes, it increases, and it is increasing with increase in level of EBIT. It is increasing with increase in level of EBIT. It goes up, and it reaches a point where it is actually touching your line of capital structure 1, that is equity. Okay, and what happens is, beyond this point, it will take the lead over capital structure 1, but still it will continue to be lesser than the capital structure 2. So this is your capital structure 3, which is your equity. Not equity, I'm sorry, which is your preference, which is your preference share capital. So if you look at this diagram, it increases and finally it touches the equity at one particular point, and beyond that it actually the EPS from this preference share capital will become greater than the EPS from the equity option, but still it will be lesser. Okay, so we have to recognize this point. This is the point of intersection. This is the point of intersection between what? Point of intersection between preference share capital and equity. Okay, so this is basically your indifference point. This is basically the indifference point between equity and preference, that is 1 and 3. And here you have to note one particular point. Look at here, the debt line, this light blue, okay, this debt is always greater than this green line which represents the preference share capital. It means the preference share capital was never able to supersede or become greater than the debt. There is always a line of difference. I'll mark the line of difference. There is always a line of difference between the debt and preference. And why you have this line of difference? Why you have this line of difference between debt and say preference? And the answer is very simple. It is the tax effect. There is a tax difference between the preference and debt, because whatever you pay in the form of interest is basically a tax deductible item. Whatever you pay in the form of interest is basically a tax deductible item. But if you pay something in the form of preference dividend, it is basically an appropriation of profit. It is basically an appropriation of profit, and it does not entitle you or entail you any deduction in taxes. So because of that reason, debt is always superior to the preference share capital. Okay. Now with this understanding, let us try to draw that indifference chart for this problem. Okay. So let's go back. We know that at 15 lakh, if EBIT is going to be 15 lakh, we know what is the level of EPS. What is the level of EPS when you have EBIT is equal to 15 lakh? It is this. That is from equity option, it is 0.5. From debt option, sorry, this is preference option, and this is debt option. I'm sorry. The debt option gives you 0.5, preference option gives you 0.31, and equity option gives you 0.65. Okay. Now we'll keep this information as a base, but let us also try to find out what is the indifference point between this debt and equity. We'll try to find out the indifference point between debt and equity before plotting. So let me do that. Indifference point between debt and equity. And how do we find out the indifference point? Let me just open. What's the formula for us to find the indifference point? See, the formula for finding the indifference point is nothing but EBIT minus interest in your option 1 multiplied by 1 minus t divided by E1. Okay, and this should be equal to EBIT minus I2 multiplied by 1 minus t divided by E2. Okay, so here I'll have the equity one, and here I'll have the debt option. Okay, so if I have equity, or let's say, yeah, if I have equity, what will happen? I don't know what is my EBIT, that's what I'm trying to find. Okay, but I know what is my interest in equity option. Please remember, this company already has a debt. Already they have a debt of 36 lakh at 10%. So they have to pay interest of 3,60,000. Okay, 3,60,000 multiplied by 1 minus t. What was the tax rate? Let me just check the tax rate. The tax rate was 40%. Okay, so it is 1 minus 0.4 divided by number of equity shares. It was, I think, 10,50,000, and this should be equal to EBIT minus I2, and I believe it was somewhere like 8,40,000. Yeah, it was 8,40,000 multiplied by 1 minus 0.4 whole divided by E2. E2 basically represents the number of shares, and which is nothing but the existing number of shares. So if you continue this mathematics, it will tell you your EBIT will be, it will tell you your EBIT is going to be 23,76,000. your EBIT is going to be 23,76,000. In the similar way, we can also find the indifference point between let's say the preference and equity. Let me just select. We can also find indifference point. Yeah, we can find the indifference point between preference and equity. Okay, and if I calculate the indifference point, which I'm not going to show it here, please try this on your own. If I calculate the indifference point between preference and equity, what I'm going to get is somewhere around let's say 34 lakh. It is going to be around 34,40,000. Okay, so if you calculate the indifference point between the preference and equity, it is going to be in the range of 34,40,000. So now with this information, let's go and draw the indifference chart. Okay, so I'll draw the line, and this is basically for my EPS. Then I'll draw this horizontal, and there I'll try to capture my EBIT. Okay, so EPS, how I'm going to plot, I'll start with let's say negative, this is 0, this is going to be 0.5, so I'll have this as minus 1, and it goes up to minus 1.5, and in the positive zone I'll have it like this: 0, 0.5, it is going to be 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and it goes up to 3. And on the EBIT, what I'm going to do is I'll start with 0, then I will carry 5 lakh, 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, 20 lakh, 25 lakhs, 30 lakhs, 35 lakhs, and it goes up to 40 lakhs. Okay, so now we'll draw the line for equity option. We'll draw the line for equity option. See, in equity option, if your EBIT is going to be 0, your EPS should be ideally 0, but please be reminded that already they have an existing interest. So if you take equity option, when your EBIT is 0, your EPS may not be exactly 0, it will be somewhere here. Okay, and it goes and goes, but here just be guided. At 15 lakh we have calculated, at 15 lakh we have calculated what was the EPS. So we'll keep that as a guiding line. What was the EPS of equity option at 15 lakh? We know it was somewhere around 0.65. Okay, it was somewhere around 0.65. So we'll keep that as a guiding line. So it should be like this. So at 15 lakh it will be like this. So the line, if I start, it should go like this. Okay, then just now we have calculated the indifference point between the debt and equity. The indifference point between debt and equity says at 23,76,000, your debt option and equity option will give you same level of EPS. Okay, at 23,76,000, your debt option and equity option will give you same level of EPS. So let me just take this further and further. So it goes like this. In this way, we can draw the equity line. Then we have to draw for debt option and preference option. So now we have the line for our equity option. Okay, this is our equity option. Next, we'll draw the line for debt option. If I take debt option, if my EBIT is going to be 0, if you calculate what is going to be the EPS, EPS will be somewhere here. Okay, it will be somewhere at -1, or it will be little closer to that. And we know what is the range of EPS when debt is 15 lakh, because we have already calculated. We have calculated when debt is 15 lakh, EPS of debt option is somewhere at 5. Okay, so it will grow like this. It will grow like this. Fine. And we know that at 23,76,000, because that is the indifference point between debt and equity, this equity option and debt option will intersect. That is 23,76,000, say somewhere here. So let me plot that. So this is the point where your debt option and equity option will mingle, and beyond this your debt option will take the lead. Beyond this, your debt option will take the lead. So this is the indifference point. This is the indifference point between the debt and equity. Okay. This is the indifference point between debt and equity. Now let us also draw the line for a preference option. Let me choose a different color. Yeah. Preference option, and preference option, if your EBIT is 0, then it is possible that your EBT will also be, your EPS will also be 0, or it can be negative. So let me start somewhere from here. And what we understand is at 15 lakh level, where we have already calculated the EPS, at 15 lakh level, preference share will have EPS of somewhere like 0.3. Okay, it will be somewhere like this. So I'll draw this. So at 15 lakh level, it is going to be somewhere like this. And we also know what is the indifference point between the equity and preference. It was something like 34,40,000. So this is the region, say something like this, 34,40,000. So at this point, at 34,40,000, your preference share capital and your equity will intersect. So I'll draw the line. So this is the point where your preference share capital and equity are intersecting, and beyond this point, your preference will take the lead over the equity, but still it is lesser than your debt option. Okay, so this is the diagram for indifference point between these two options, between these alternatives. Okay, so this is the indifference chart, and if you note, equity option is growing with growth in EBIT, but when the debt option, the green line came into picture at 23,76,000, the debt option had an indifference point with the equity option, and beyond this the debt option started taking the lead. And if you look at the preference share capital, it was growing with growth in EBIT, but somewhere at 34,40,000 it intersected with the equity, and beyond that preference also started taking the lead, but it is always, please note that it is always lesser than the debt option, because there is always a line of difference between the debt and equity, debt and preference. And why this happens, as explained, it happens because of the tax effect. So this is about the indifference chart. So we have now completed both A and B. What is left over is C. Question is, which alternative do you prefer? How much would EBIT need to increase before the next alternative would be the best? Okay, so now we have talked about three alternatives, and the best is always the equity, because the equity was giving the highest EPS when the EBIT was 15 lakh. Okay, because if you look at here, when your EBIT, because that's their actual EBIT, when their EBIT is 15 lakh, equity is the best. But what is the next best alternative? The next best alternative should be debt option, because it will give you a better EPS when compared with preference. So when this next best alternative will become the best alternative, that is, your EPS from debt option is the second best, but if you want that to be the best, that is equal to or greater than the equity option, what should happen is, now they are standing at an EBIT of how much? They are standing at an EBIT of 15 lakh. 15 lakh is giving EPS of 0.5. So if you want the debt option to be the best option, then it should move from EBIT of 15 lakh to 23,76,000. Okay, if it can move from EBIT from 15 lakh to 23,76,000, that is what's the difference? The difference works out to 8,76,000, 8.76 lakh. If EBIT can move from this amount to this amount, that is, if it can increase by 8,76,000, what will happen is, it will reach the indifference point between debt and equity. So at that level, you will become indifferent between debt and equity, and what is most important is from that level onwards your debt option will become best or the best option when compared with equity option.